Hi friends, my name is Jake. Welcome to Canadian Cutting Edge, and we've got another TwoSun review today. This is the TS162, as you saw in the thumbnail. Micarta handle scales. It's a very coarse micarta. We've got a D2 blade, fairly long blade. It's almost 4 inches from the handle to the tip. And this is a big knife. It's not huge, but it's a big knife. Flipper, and there is a possibility of, if you get it just right, I'm not good at it, especially with this knife, flicking it out from underneath. There's a tiny bit of a ridge here on this hole that you can get your finger into to flip it open. I'm just not that good at it. A lot of guys are, I'll use my index finger, a lot of guys are a whole lot better at it than I am. This knife can be flicked open by people who are skilled at it, or if you become skilled at it, I guess. There's a higher end version of this knife, just under $150. You get solid carbon fiber and then a titanium bolster, an S90V blade. That's at AliExpress. I saw listings for it at other stores, but not in stock anywhere. Unfortunately, this knife is not in stock at White Mountain Knives any longer. I posted on Instagram about this last week, and then they sold out. So some of you guys are on Instagram. I'm pretty sure some of you are. And you can always click on the notify me button on White Mountain Knives so you can get this as well. How much does this cost? Get my notes over here. $47.99 at White Mountain Knives. You save 10%. That makes it $43.19 US, about 54 Canadian dollars to get this knife. If you can't wait, you can always go to AliExpress. They've got it for $50, 50 American dollars. What is that, about 60 Canadian dollars right now? Something like that. The exchange rate's actually pretty good, a bit over $60. So for that price, if you like what you see, I think it's worth it. Let's go onto the tabletop and take a closer look at what I mean. Well, the first thing I'm going to say is don't think for a split second that I'm suggesting this is a perfect knife, because it's not, but it's a pretty good knife. Fingerprints, yes, there's going to be fingerprints all over this knife if you've got skin like mine. That's one thing I'm not too fond of. That's why I like stonewash or even bead blast blades better than satin finish. But it's got a really nice satin finish. Oh, before I get ahead of myself, yeah, the size comparison with the Ontario Rat 1. There you go. Very similar size knife. If we line up the ends here, you can see the blade length. Actually, I need a little more brightness here, don't I? There we go. You can see that it's a little bit shorter. The Rat is shorter. We've got a larger knife here. The handle size is very much the same. The grip area from the finger choil to the end is a little bit larger than a Rat. So yeah, this is a big knife. We've got, what kind of blade shape are we going to call that? A spear point blade? Maybe an extended leaf shape? Drop point? All of them technically can fit. Call it whatever you want. This is what it looks like. We've got a swedge that starts up here and it goes right to the, well, just shy of the tip. The blade is entirely belly, so it's all a radius there. We've got a small fuller with a hole there. A little bit of a ramp up for the thumb rest there. Some big jimping there. It's a good looking blade. TwoSun is on the blade right here. It's not too big. I might prefer it up a little higher, but that's being pretty nitpicky. On the other side, we've got D2 on the Ricasso right here. I'd like that to be smaller. I would like the steel type to be just really small, hard to find. Wong design. So yes, this is a Wong design knife. I tend to like his designs. They're pretty good. The sharpener's choil up here. Yeah, we've got the perennial issue, don't we? Is that a sharpener's choil or a forward choil? If it's a sharpener's choil, it's wasting cutting edge. If it's a forward choil, it's not big enough. So, yeah, that's a common frustration. And like I commonly say, an easy way to fix that would be, instead of having this straight, you could curve that in, and then the finger could sit closer to the handle, and then it would work. Now, you can still use it as a forward choil if you're careful, but it's not going to be hard to get your finger nicked on the heel of the blade right there. So it would have taken just a tiny bit more work to make this a good forward choil. Other than that, the blade is a nice blade. The satin lines on there from the satin grind, the satin finish from the grind. Sometimes I'm just don't know what I'm saying, eh? It looks good. It's on a slight angle, the lines are. The blade is definitely well developed for piercing. It does get a little thin behind the grind, so it's certainly not a prying tool. The edge here is nice and thin. It's not crazy thin, so it's thick enough to be strong, but it's thin enough to be a very good slicing knife. And it's, you know, a nice full flat grind. So now for the handle. It's actually a very comfortable handle. We've got a spine that's a little bit rounded back, so it fits sort of in a palm. It is kind of extended, almost straight. We've got a cove. They've milled a cove all the way around the entire knife. I'm not so sure I'm fond of that. The looks of it is really good. I like the look on the handle at the edges, but when you grip the knife really hard for extended cutting, it gets a little hot because you've got a crisp edge along the, you know, the corner of the micarta right there. And with this coarse micarta, the weave here kind of sticks out, so it's got little bumps. If you run your finger along it, you can feel tiny little bumps. Kind of like if you take a look at the pivot ring here, the pivot pin, you see the micarta, you see these little bright spots. That's the fabric ending right there. And since it's being held by this resin, it creates tiny little hard spots. Not a big deal. You could take the handle scales off and do a little bit of very fine sanding to help make that better. Wouldn't be hard to do at all. It is a liner lock knife. Check that out. The lockup is very nice. Exactly where I want a brand new knife to be. You got a little bit of jimping on the top of the lock release, so it's easy to get your thumb in there to disengage the lock. To close it, works very, very well. Right or left-handed, not a problem. I like it. The liners are highly skeletonized. I'll show you the inside later on. We've got body screws in the middle as well as over here on the end. These are nice TwoSun screws, kind of like the Kubi screws. I wouldn't be surprised if Kubi knives and TwoSun knives are made at the same factory, the same part of the same factory even, because they use the same kind of screws, which I really like a lot, instead of button screws. You can find some button screws on this, and that is right there on the pocket clip. They are fairly large. They're T8, I believe. Let me just double check that real quick. I've not looked in there yet. Yeah, they're T8 screws. There's a fair bit of play in them, but they're very hard. And being T8 size, they're going to be very hard to strip out. This one's a little bit tighter. And these screws, there we go. They've got even less wiggle in them. So they're even made at a higher tolerance than those button screws, which is a good thing. I've not taken the knife apart yet, but I'll do it for you in a little while. The back spacer has got jimping all the way along it, and it comes most of the way around the back. The knife grip, quite comfortable in a reverse grip or a reverse pull grip, fist grip, saber grip. This is a knife that is comfortable in a lot of different ways. The pocket clip, like I was talking about in a second, I forgot to finish it. It comes flat at the top. I don't like this pocket clip in the terms of this knife deserves its own pocket clip. And if you get the high-end version, it does have a really nice titanium pocket clip. But this pocket clip is better than the early pocket clips that TwoSun was doing. Let's see how it looks going in and out of a pocket. So that little step climbs over right away, and it just goes right to the bottom. It doesn't have a lot of grip and hold, but it doesn't move around. It sits in the pocket very well, and it's just a tiny little bit of peekaboo sticking out of the pocket. So it's somewhat discreet. I'd like a stonewash or bead blast version of this pocket clip. That'd make it quite a bit better. All right, now let's start talking about some more things that I don't like so much. The lanyard hole. It's a good size, but I don't like lanyard holes in that placement because when you're holding the knife, well, where's the lanyard? The lanyard's pushing into the palm of your hand. So I would have preferred the lanyard hole to be further back. Maybe they put one of the body screws here and the other, like the spine screws, and then put the lanyard hole where this screw is. That would make it better, because then the paracord or whatever cordage you use for a lanyard comes back here. I don't use lanyards much, so really it doesn't bother me at all. And I know a lot of you guys guys and gals don't use lanyards either, so not that big a deal. They did the extra little step of chamfering the inside of that hole, so it's very well done that way. One of the other cons I found on this knife, since they don't use any Loctite, at least I believe they don't, and I'll take this off on camera right now just to see. I haven't taken it out yet at all. This is my first time. Yes, there's no Loctite there at all. This pivot screw comes loose during use. I've had to re-tighten it up many, many times. Well, whenever I used it. It doesn't take long at all for it to come loose. If you tighten it up so much that you think it's not going to come loose again, well, then it's too tight. It doesn't want to slide open very well. It doesn't have that really fast opening. And if you pull it back just so that it still has no blade play, yeah, it's nice and tight, then it starts to come loose again. So you're going to want to use Loctite in here of some kind. I like to use VC3 Vibratite Thread Mate. It's very different than Loctite. It's designed to be shock resistant, and if anything's a shock, that's a shock, right? So that's what I prefer, but I also use the Loctite, the blue stuff. I did a video about that. You can look for that if you want to. The screws, at least it's not free spinning. It's somewhat decorative, looks good. The flipper tab, it's got just a little bit of jimping on the front of it. It's very easy to do, light switch mode. But even if you just push back like on a 45-degree angle, that works very well as well. Whoops. And if I use just a tiny bit of wrist action, then if I flick it using my index finger, my middle finger, I can make it open that way as well. So it's got good action. It's got good ball bearings. Overall, I like this thing. So I'm going to pause the video now. I'll take it apart and show you the insides. So there it is when I've just taken it apart. You can see this weird section right here. That's for the body screws. It's for a different version of the knife, different handle scales, like if there's the bolsters screwed on separately. We've got ceramic ball bearings in there, and it's a little bit dirty, but it can get cleaned up easily enough. The typical slight little ramp right there for when you go to close the knife. The stop pin works very well, and it works on both ends, opening and closing it. G10 backspacer here. It's decent. It's a good knife, well made. Before I get into the sizes and dimensions, one other thing I forgot to mention, alignment almost perfect, which is very good. So yeah, this is quite nice indeed. The balance point too. Yes, I remember now. The balance point's back here. It's further back than I'd like. I'd prefer the balance point to be up here. If they would have skeletonized it a little bit, then the balance point would be a little bit better. Why could they have skeletonized it? Why do I think of that? It weighs 135 grams, 4.8 ounces. So, I don't know, maybe 4.6, 4.5 ounces might have been, a little bit better. This is a big size knife for its weight, so I don't begrudge the weight on this knife at all. The sharpness from the factory, 120 bess. Very good from the factory. The cutting edge length, 94.4 millimeters, 3.716 inches. Blade length, tip to the closest spot on the micarta, 99 millimeters, 3.898 inches. So basically 3.9-inch blade. The thickness of the blade, 3.83 millimeters, 0.151 inches. So yes, it's a good chunk over 1/8 of an inch. The blade depth. So within the cutting edge range, it's actually widest right here. I would have thought it was here, but no, it actually is right here. 27.6 millimeters, 1.087 inches. The thickness behind the grind, 0.46 millimeters, 18 thousandths of an inch. That's why she slices so well, or one of the reasons why. The grind angles. On this side, 19.8. On this side, 21.2. A very tiny bit of variability along the length of the blade, so it was well sharpened. The handle now, the handle length, 125.5 millimeters, 4.941 inches. So just like this is just under 4 inches, this is just under 5. The grip area. Since, it's got a bit of a curve here, it's hard to say the exact number, but it's over 10.5 centimeters, over 4 inches of grip. So people with big hands, extra large hand, well, mine's just barely extra large, so even bigger hands than mine have got a lot of handle to play with. The thickness of the handle, not counting the pocket clip, 16.6 millimeters, 0.654 of an inch. So it is a little bit bigger, but it suits the knife. The handle depth within the grip area, it's largest right here, 28.2 millimeters, 1.11 inches. When the knife is closed, the depth that's largest is actually right up here, but just barely, 33.8 millimeters, 1.33 inches. And the total length of this knife, oh, I did it again. I hadn't done it for quite a while now. 224.5 millimeters, and I didn't do it in inches. It'll be on the screen what the exact number is, but it looks like it's about 8 and 7/8. So yeah, it's a pretty good knife. Like I said, the price, under $50. That's not bad. That's American dollars. For what you get, I think this knife is totally worth it. Yeah, it's got a few little flaws that I don't like too terribly much. It's easy to fix the pivot screw from coming loose. Lanyard position doesn't really matter to me. Pocket clip, well, it's okay. It's not terrible. It's a pretty good pocket clip. I like that the screws are T8, so it's really hard to mess those up. And there's enough space here, so it goes into a pocket, and it's fairly deep. So yeah, it's actually not a big con at all. The hand feel getting slightly hot, well, that can be remedied as well, just with a little bit of sandpaper. The sharpness choil, that's one that's a little bit harder to fix. It's not that big a deal, certainly not a deal breaker for me. And it could have used a tiny bit more skeletonizing. So yeah, it's got a lot of good things going for it, and just there's no really big serious cons, unless one of those is really serious for you. Action's good, bearings are good, lockup's good. This is a good knife. It performs well, and I think it looks good. So thanks for watching, liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. That's not just a mantra that every YouTuber gives. Those things really do make a difference. So if you could vote up or down, thumbs up, thumbs down, any vote is good, and comments are even better. Till next time, remember, friends, always cut towards your chum, not your thumb.